We're in the middle of a series called No Matter What. We're walking through the book of Philippians. We're going to be in Philippians chapter 3. If you've got a Bible, grab it. We'll be there. If you don't have a Bible and you want one, as always, find me after service down front. I'll give you one, just my gift to you. We're going to be in Philippians chapter 3. While you're going there, I'm going to springboard off of Ephesians 2. You'll see we're going back and forth, Philippians, Ephesians. I'm going to springboard off of Ephesians 2, a couple of verses, because it really sets the tone and the context for where we're going. Then I'm going to pray for us, and we'll jump into the message. So I'm going to read Ephesians 2. I'm going to read verses 8 through 10. Here's Paul's letter to the church at Ephesus. God saved you by his grace when you believed, and you can't take credit for this. It is a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things we have done, so none of us can boast about it. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. Let me pray for us. Jesus, my prayer is that here in this moment, you'd begin to transform our hearts and minds and souls, and you'd begin to shape us and our lives and our thoughts and everything to become more and more like Jesus. That is my prayer. That it is not just another Sunday, that it's just not a few songs and a message, but God, the power of your Spirit, Lord, my prayer is you begin to work in us and through us today. We love you, Jesus. Ask these things in your name. Amen. So if you know me well, then you know this about me, that I love meeting with people and asking questions about their lives and hearing things that they're good at, that they're passionate about, and things that they've spent a long time doing, like in their career field or their hobby. And I love it when it's outside of my purview of what I do on a weekly basis. So, I like talking to other pastors, but after a while, we get a little boring. And so I like to talk to people outside of that, and I love when they're passionate about it, and I love when they're very, very good at their job, and I get to learn something new. Last week, I went to lunch with a buddy of mine, and he invited a buddy of his that we had met once, and so we all three go to lunch. We started chit-chatting, and the new guy, again, I hadn't met once. We started talking. I just kind of asked him what he did for a living, and he jumps into it. And he tells me what he does for a living, and all of a sudden, this conversation begins to go talking about trains and train tracks and the logistics of building train tracks and the shipping of trains compared to the shipping of 18-wheelers over bridges and how much cargo comes into the port of Savannah. And we just do a deep dive into all of this. And after 30 minutes, he goes, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. He goes, I've been talking about this for 30 minutes, and I'm hanging on every word, and I'm just keep on asking questions and more. I'm fascinated by it. Very, very good at his job, done it for 20 plus years, and so he tells me all about it, and I was just blown away by it. And that evening, I get home, and I'm talking to Brianna, kind of debriefing my day, and I get to this conversation. And so I start telling her about trains and train tracks and 18-wheelers and logistical shipping things out of the port of Savannah. And if you ever had a conversation with your spouse and you feel more excited than they are, you're just so passionate, and she's there going, okay, yeah, and I'm going to train tracks and this and that and this shit. Do you know how much cargo comes in the port of Savannah? She goes, no, I don't really care, but tell me, and type of deal. And so at the end of it, and she goes, well, did you enjoy the conversation? I thought it was awesome. She goes, well, I'm happy for you. And she kind of walks away and does something else. Now, I tell you all of that why? Because before that conversation with that gentleman, I absolutely knew what trains and train tracks were. I knew what 18-wheelers were. I knew where the port of Savannah was. I knew all of those things and terms. But after that conversation, I had a whole new appreciation and a greater understanding of those things. And it was it was a whole new level of my eyes and mind being open to all of what it takes to ship cargo on trains and on trucks. And I share that with you because we're looking at some terms, some attributes, some characteristics of God today that if you're a church person, you most certainly know these terms. And even if you're not a church person, you're not a Jesus follower, I would bet that you have at least heard these, at least in conversation or passing. So these aren't going to be new concepts or attributes of God. But my hope is that at the end of our time today, there is a greater depth and understanding of these terms. So we're talking about three big things. We're talking about the grace of God. We're talking about your relationship with God, and we're talking about the power of God. The the grace of God, your relationship with God, and the power of God. And again, if you've grown up in church, you've probably heard those terms and familiar with them. But I hope today that I do my very best job communicating what Paul is trying to communicate to the church of Philippi, that at the end, you would have a greater depth and understanding of God's grace and his relationship with you and his power in your life. Because here's what I know without a shadow of a doubt, and I believe to the depths of my heart. That if you can take these terms, these concepts, the grace of God, his relationship with you, and the power of God, and if you can go just a little bit deeper today, a little bit deeper understanding and overlay that onto your life, I promise you it will change your life for the better. Philippians chapter 3, if you've got a Bible, we're going to be there. We're going to pick it up in verse 1. Here's what he writes to the church at Philippi. He says, whatever happens, so we're in this series, no matter what. So it goes, no matter what. Whatever happens, my dear brothers and sisters, here's what he says, rejoice in the Lord. If you've got a pen or a highlighter, those words, rejoice in the Lord. I never get tired of telling you these things, and I do it to safeguard your faith. I need you to stop right there. That word rejoice, it has ties in its original language to the word grace and to the word joy. So the word grace and joy are in that word rejoice. And so he's talking about rejoicing or being glad in experiencing the grace of God. And then he dives down into the grace of God and what it means for the church of Philippi and for him. Look at verse 2. He says, watch out for those dogs, those people who do evil, those mutilators who say, you must be circumcised to be saved. For we who worship by the Spirit of God are the ones who are truly circumcised. We rely on what Christ Jesus has done for us, and we put no confidence in human effort. Though I could have confidence in my own effort if anyone could. Indeed, if others have reason for confidence in their own efforts, I have even more. Just stop right there. So he's talking about rejoicing in the grace of God. He goes, hey, be careful. There's going to be some people that are going to come in, and they're going to give you a list that you need to check all the boxes on in order to be made right in the eyes of God. They're going to put some things in place. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to follow these certain laws. And then and only then will you be good in the eyes of God. He goes, I'm here to tell you to watch out for them. That is not the grace of God. But then he goes, listen, if anybody is going to be good enough in the eyes of God, Paul goes, it's going to be me. I'm going to be the one that's going to be right. And then in the next few verses, he slides his resume across the table. Look at verse 5. He says this, and here's his resume. He goes, I was circumcised when I was 8 days old. I'm a pure-blooded citizen of Israel and a member of the tribe of Benjamin, a real Hebrew if there ever was one. I was a member of the Pharisees who demand the strictest obedience to the Jewish law. I was so zealous that I harshly persecuted the church. And as for righteousness, I obeyed the law without fault. So he takes his resume, slides it across, and goes, listen, if anybody is going to be good enough, it's me. But look at verse 7. I once thought these things were valuable, but now I consider them worthless because of what Christ has done. And what has Christ done? He's talking about the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And he's describing God's undeserved grace. God's undeserved grace. The church at Philippi, he's going, listen, there's going to be some people that come in and it's performance-based, it's works-based. There's a checklist. Do this, give to this charity, work this many hours, say this many prayers. Then and only then are you good enough for God. And Paul goes, listen, if it's a competition, then I win. Here's my resume. And he slides it across the table. He goes, but all of that is worthless because of what Christ Jesus has done. And he talks about the grace of God in their life and in ours. And I don't know what your background is. I don't know what your faith upbringing is, but I know so many of us, especially in the culture and the world we live in, it's performance-based. Do these things and you win. Do these things, you climb the ladder. Do these things and you succeed. There is no ladder when it comes to your relationship with God. There is not all these things, and God goes, now you're good. So grace is this undeserved thing that you and I, as mere mortal, sinful human beings, we fall woefully short of a holy, perfect God. there is a massive gap. There's a massive delta there. Grace walks in the front door and closes that gap. Now, as sinful human beings, because of grace, you and I can stand perfect before a perfect, holy God. But it is an undeserved grace that none of us can work for or are good enough for. And I realize that where we live and in the culture we live in, and you sitting in this room, you're very, very successful at what you do. You're very, very good at relationships and at jobs and finances and life, and you've got it all together. And so this idea of not being good enough can come to a foreign concept to so many. Because you've been told, well, I'm not good enough. Well, you just do the things, and all of a sudden you succeed. You ring the bell of success. You get the job. You get all the things in life. And you're going, I've done all of these things. It makes sense. You overlay that onto the things of God. And I'm just here to tell you that you have never, ever been good enough. You aren't good enough, and you can never be good enough to be made right in the eyes of a holy God. There's absolutely nothing you can do. Not enough things you can do to just go on your own to go, you know what, there's a holy God. I can climb the ladder to get to him. That's why grace is needed. It walks in the door and makes us right in the eyes of God. But again, that's not the world we live in. It's going, if we just do enough, then we can make it. I know this might come hard to believe to many of you, but in high school, I was horrible at athletics. Right here. This is where that hurts, right there, just right there. So in high school, I was bad at athleticism. I like to think I had other great attributes and things. I'm not sure what they were, but athletics, I was recounting this week. I tried out for the track team, soccer team, baseball team, and golf team, which everybody made the golf team. I got cut from all four of those. All four. I made the freshman basketball team as a sophomore. Yeah, so embarrassing. Junior varsity as a junior, and then I was a pity bench player as a senior on varsity, if that makes sense. So that was my athletic career. So this thing, where they had the names of the kids list. I don't know if they do this anymore, but your name's not on there. You know that heartbreaking feeling? After 3 or 4 times, you get used to it. Yes, I know. I'll see a counselor later this week. I appreciate that. So after a while, just going, and every time as a Christian, you're not, tall enough, big enough, fast enough, athletic enough, strong enough, whatever it is, I'm going, but I really want to be on the team. I really want to be on the baseball team, the soccer team, the track team, the golf team. I'll do anything, Chris, and these aren't the things you're good at, but I really want it, and there was just nothing I could do in order to be good enough. And it's the same way with, you might really want it. You're going, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to pray really, I'm going to do all the things in order. And God goes, you're just not good enough for a holy, perfect God. But the good news of grace, and this is what Paul's talking about, going, listen, all of these things, my resume, it's trash compared to the priceless value of Christ that's done on the cross. Death, burial, resurrection. The good news of grace is, no, you're not good enough. But because of what Jesus did and grace walks in, all of a sudden you and I could stand before a holy God. Then he shifts gears a little bit and he begins to talk about his personal relationship. Look at verse 8. He says, yes, everything else is worthless when compared to the infinite value of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. For his sake, I have discarded everything else, counting it all as garbage so that I could gain Christ. And that little word gain, circle that, mark that. I could gain Christ and become one with him. I no longer count on my own righteousness through obeying the law. Rather, I become righteous through faith in Christ, for God's way of making us right depends on faith. So here's what he's talking about. He's talking about God's personal relationship. And Paul goes, I've experienced that through the grace of God by placing my faith in Jesus Christ. There is a personal relationship that Paul is trying to describe. And if you hear nothing else today, hear me very, very carefully. I want to be as clear as I possibly can and say this. The God of the universe wants a deep and growing relationship with you. The holy, perfect God of the universe that created all things wants a deep and growing and personal relationship with you. And what's interesting, Paul is going, listen, everything up until this point I've counted as worthless because of what Christ Jesus has done. And now he goes, I hold that in the highest value, of infinite value, my relationship with the God of the universe. Now, many of you in here, in your line of work, you're in the relationship business. Like, you have to manage relationships, make new relationships. You're out there networking, and your business, the way you make money depends on how great you facilitate and how well you value relationships. And this is what Paul's talking about, going, listen, I value the relationship of Jesus Christ, that personal relationship, at the highest level. It's not just a thing in my life. He goes, it is the thing in my life, and everything else is worthless in order to gain Christ. Now, here's what's interesting. That word gain at the end of verse 8, that word gain is a merchant term. It's a merchant term, and it talks about trade and commerce. So that word gain means I trade something good for something better. I traded something of lesser value for something of greater value. And so Paul's writing, going, listen, all of these things I've done, my resume, my life, my control, me, I trade all of that to gain Christ. I trade something that I think is good for something far greater. Now, my oldest two sons, they're both in middle school. And having middle school sons is interesting. So if you're an empty nest, you've been an empty nester for a while, let me tell you what it's like raising middle school boys in today's modern world. And if your oldest is like preschooler, let me tell you what you have to look forward to, okay? So if you're an empty nester, like middle school boys still stink. They still eat a lot, like all of those things. However, in today's modern world, with middle school boys, at least mine, they have introduced me to the world of YouTube videos. Now, when I say YouTube videos, you go, I watch YouTube videos. This is not like how do you repair a leaky sink video. This is YouTube creators. And if you've got middle school or high schoolers, then you can ask them about that. There are YouTube creators out there that make a lot of money, usually young, very creative men and women that are out there, and they create shows and videos, kind of their own TV network, put it out on YouTube, get millions and millions of views and followers, and make a lot of money. And so when you have two middle school boys, like I've tried to connect with them, they begin to introduce me to all these different YouTube creators. You watch one, and then YouTube says, watch this one and this one. A couple of weeks ago, I stumbled onto this YouTube creator video, and it's this floppy-haired kid out of Austin, Texas. Young kid, super nice and clean and that kind of stuff, and he's just great on camera, and he's doing all these cuts and everything, his music, and these little 10-minute videos, millions of followers, millions of views, and here is the line of the video that got me sucked in. The line was this: I traded 1 penny for a house. I was like, well, this is fascinating because I want that job. Like, how do I trade a penny for a house? And so I clicked on it, and he goes through it, and it's a series of videos, takes 30 days. He starts with a penny, and he just begins to trade, and he kind of followed videos, his whole thing, and at the end, he winds up with a house. Now, it's not a mansion by any sort, but it's a house. Started with a penny, fascinating video. And I share that with you because I think so many of you, you're holding on to the penny, and God goes, I've got something so much better for you. And you're going, yeah, but this penny, I know it, I can control it, and it's mine. And God goes, yes, but there's a much bigger thing that if you would value that relationship with Christ, if you would let go of your selfishness, the things that you want, your control, and you would hang on to the things of God, there's so much more out there for you. And we go, no, the penny is mine, I can control it, it's in my hands, and I know what to do with it. And Paul is saying, I discard all of that. Then I value at the highest level this personal relationship with the God of the universe. And then he closes out his thought as he talks about the power of God. Look at verse 10. He says, I want to know Christ and experience the mighty power that raised him from the dead. I want to suffer with him and sharing in his death so that one way or another I will experience the resurrection from the dead. And here's what he's talking about. He's talking about God's mighty power. Because of God's grace, like me, a sinner, can be made right in the eyes of God, and that's because I've placed my faith in Jesus. So now that's a personal relationship, an ongoing, growing relationship. And he goes, listen, I want to experience, and that word is to mean personally experience, or front row seat to the power of God in my life. He goes, this is what I want to know. This is what I want to experience. He would say the same thing earlier in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 19. He would say this, I also pray that you will understand the incredible greatness of God's power for us who believe in him. This is the same mighty power that raised Christ from the dead, seated him in the place of honor, God's right hand in the heavenly realms. Now hear me carefully. If you're a follower of Jesus, if you're here and you're going, I'm a Jesus follower, I'm a Christian, you've placed your faith in Jesus Christ because of the grace of God on your life, then that same power is at work and alive in you. And the question is, do you really want to experience it firsthand, or do you want to keep an arm's length and just go, I'm sure that's nice? You can say, I'm sure that's nice out there, and you just kind of go through life, and it's mundane, and it's routine. You just kind of go through the motions. Paul goes, no. I want to experience the power of God, the supernatural power of God in my life. I want it firsthand. I want to know it. I want to experience it. I want to see it in my life. I want the clarity that it brings. I want the awesome supernatural stuff that it brings. I don't want it to be a foreign concept. I want it to be up close and personal. Now, here's what's interesting. When he talks about this word power, talks about the power of God. The word power is the word dynamis or dunamis. It's where we get our word dynamite from. So when he's talking about the power of God, he's talking about this miraculous, like explosive, like hard to comprehend power of God that's available to every believer because of Jesus Christ. And he goes, I want to experience that firsthand. Now, I had this great idea this week that I was going to illustrate the power of God. I was going to come up on stage and blow up M80s on stage. And our media team just did not like that creative thought. I was like, it's gonna be awesome. Because, M80s are waterproof. I was gonna throw it in a bucket of water, blow up the water. Okay, y'all have very different childhoods than I did. Anyway, so I was gonna do that. And I told the media team, we're gonna blow it up, it's gonna be awesome. And they're like, I don't really want water up on the boxes. Like, we'll just blow it up there, it's gonna be kind of loud. Like, nah, don't. So instead, they give me this dinky thing. They're like, this will illustrate dynamite. No, it does not. I need it on my M80. Anyway, so you get the kind of, this is what he's trying to explain, like this explosive, like, oh my goodness, power of God, this is incredible. Then he goes, I want to experience that firsthand. Now, I'm a full-grown man with 4 kids of my own. I love firework displays. Like July 4th, I just love it. And I love being there watching the fireworks display. I love when they go up. I love when they explode and you feel the thump in your chest. I love the bright lights. I love the smell of the smoke afterwards and all that. I love the ooze and all this. It's an incredible experience. Now, as I've gotten older, I've become a bit of a snooty, fireworks fan. So if it's a good fireworks show, I enjoy it. I want to be there. I want it to be explosive. And I revert back to my little kid days, but I want to be there and I want to see it firsthand. I'll tell you what's not near as good is when somebody tries to tell me about the fireworks show that they saw. I'll tell you what else is not near as good is when I can see the fireworks shows in the distance, like at another neighborhood or over the horizon. I can see it, but it's not near the same. See, you can hear about the power of God from me. You can see it in somebody else's life, but it is a whole nother thing to experience it firsthand. To be there and to see God open up the right doors and close the wrong doors, and this prayer that you've been praying for, like he answers it, but not in the way that you thought he'd answer it, in a far better way, in a far different way, and you begin to experience, like that is available for you as a follower of Jesus. Like clarity on decisions and peace through anxiety, like all of these things is available to you. It is a life not lived boring. Not lived emotions. It is a life following God and experiencing his power, come what may. But because of the grace of God, I place my faith in him, I have a personal relationship with God. Now I get to experience the power of God in my life. This is what Paul's talking about. Grace of God, the relationship with God, the power of God. Terms we're all familiar with. But Paul, he's taking us at a deeper level, deeper depth, going, no. This grace, if anybody's good enough, it's me, but it's trash. My relationship with God is because I placed my faith in Jesus Christ and what he did. And I trade all of that stuff to gain Jesus. And because of that, now I want a front row seat. I don't want a back row seat. I don't want to go through a boring, mundane life. I want to see the experience the power of God firsthand in my life. I don't want to just hear about it. I don't want to see it. I want to experience it firsthand. So what do you do with all this? You go, okay, Chris, I get that. That's nice. What do I do with this? I wrote down 3 no matter what statements for you to do this week. First is this: no matter what, receive his grace, value his relationship, and experience his power. Receive his grace, value his relationship, and experience his power. Receive his grace. I get for many of you, you are performance driven, that your whole life has been that way, whether it's academics or sports or school or your work, and you just do all of these things. You've climbed every ladder that you can possibly climb. There is no ladder with God. It is a gift called grace, and you either receive it or you don't. And so you've just got to wrestle with yourself going, do I receive it or do I not? I would encourage you to receive his grace today and then value his relationship. For some of you, that's valuing it for the very first time, placing your faith in Jesus Christ. His death, burial, resurrection, and what that means for you. For many of you, you've placed your faith in Jesus at some point in the past, but you just haven't valued it lately. Like it's just become a thing in your life rather than the thing. Like it's all these other things. I've got my relationship with Jesus, but it's just not of infinite value that Paul talks about. And so, man, I would take however you value Jesus and make it the first and foremost thing in your life. And then experience the power of God. James chapter 4, verse 8 says, come close to God and he will come close to you. You want to experience the power of God in your life, it's best done from up close. Not from a distance, not from hearing it from somebody else. And so just go, Lord, for far too long, I've experienced it from the sidelines. I want to be in the game. I want to experience your power. I want to know it. I want the clarity. I want all the things. What does that mean? I don't know, Lord, but I just want to experience it firsthand. So whatever that means for my life, Lord, I accept your grace. My faith is in your son, Jesus. I'm growing in that relationship. So, Lord, I want to experience your power firsthand today. Receive his grace. Value his relationship, experience the power of God in your life. And I promise you, you won't go through life boring and emotionless. It will be a ride of highs and lows. It'll be a ride of ups and downs, but it'll be a ride that God takes you on. It'll be an adventure that God takes you on. You'll get to see and experience his power in your life. Doors open, doors closing, answers to prayer that you didn't think, clarity for decisions, all of these things because of the grace of God experienced by your faith in God, and you get to experience the power of God. Now, I've been praying for you this week in light of all of this, and there's a prayer I've been praying specifically for you this week. And it's a prayer that actually Paul prayed for the church at Ephesus. And so I've prayed this prayer for you this week, and I just want to read it for you. And it's out of Ephesians chapter 3, starting at verse 14, and I'll finish with this. Paul's prayer for the church at Ephesus and what my prayer has been for local church this week. He says, when I think of all this is Paul, I fall to my knees and I pray to the Father, the creator of everything in heaven and on earth. Here's his prayer. I pray that from his glorious, unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength through his Spirit. Then Christ will make his home in your hearts as you trust in him. Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. And may you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is. May you experience the love of Christ, though it is too great to fully understand. Then you will be made complete with all the fullness of life and power that comes from God. Now all glory to God, who is able through his mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think. Glory to him in the church and in Christ Jesus through all generations, forever and ever. Amen. Let me pray for us. With every head bowed and every eye closed, for those in this room, at some point you've placed your faith in Jesus, I'm going to ask you a question. I don't do this every week, but I want to do it today. With every head bowed and every eye closed, if you think about your spiritual life, your spiritual walk with the Lord, and it's been a little dry, it's been a little emotionless, it's been a little flat, and you're going, Chris, I would love for you to pray for me to experience firsthand the power of God in my life in a new and fresh way. If that is you, would you do me a favor and just raise your hand just so I can see? Just so I can see it. As you go, man, I want to experience the power of God. Okay, put your hands down. Father, I pray for those that raise their hand. Lord, my prayer is that right here in this moment, that they would experience the power of God firsthand in their life. Maybe it's a clarity for a decision. Maybe it's a prayer that they have been praying for years. Maybe it's healing. Maybe it's peace through an anxious or fearful situation. Maybe it's an extra ounce of your comfort. Maybe it's a purpose that they've been lacking. Whatever it is, Lord, my prayer is that right now, they begin to experience the power of God in their life. Now, again, with every head bowed and every eye closed, for those in this room that you've never placed your faith in Jesus, you've heard of the grace of God and the relationship that he wants with you and the power of God, but that's never really become personal for you. The good news is that it can. And that the grace of God is available to you if you would place your faith in his son Jesus and his death, burial, and resurrection. The good news is that you can do that right here and right now. It's not a list you have to do, not a box you have to check. That the grace of God makes you right in the eyes of God by faith in Jesus. And if you've never done that, I'm going to lead you in a very simple prayer. You can say something like this. What's really important is that you mean it from the depths of your heart. And I just want to help lead you with whatever's going on in your heart. Just say something like this. Just say, today, Jesus, I trust you. I ask your forgiveness for all my sins. Please fill me with your spirit. Teach me from your word. And help me to live for you from this day forward. I place my faith in you for the salvation of my soul, forgiveness of my sins. In Jesus' name I pray. Father, I pray for all of us. I pray, God, that we would not go through life flat, dry, but God, that we would experience the power of God in our lives, in our marriage, in our finances, in our relationships, in our job, in our school, in our thought life. We don't just hear about it from others. We don't just see it on the horizon, but we would be there firsthand and experience it because of our relationship with you provided by the grace of God. We love you, Jesus, and ask these things in your precious and holy name. Amen.